Alright guys, I'm back. Playing the Incredible Proof Machine. Go to incredible.pm, the URL, and it will take you to this website. This is episode 4, so we are going to do session 4. And that's with the falses. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, if you have like a math friend, or if you're in computers, or I don't know. But you might have heard somewhere someone say something about false implies everything. Which kind of, if you're not like familiar with like working with logic, it kind of might sound weird. And there's a few things in about logic that will sound weird, but it has to do with the mechanics of the type of logic that people usually use, which is called propositional calculus or classical logic, or in some cases Boolean logic. And what it's basically saying is that it doesn't sound intuitive, because it sounds like, well, if you can prove that, if the sky is pink, then, everything is true. Elephants are 5 pounds and elephants are 10 pounds. And, it just sounds like it doesn't make any sense at all. But it's more relating to the mechanics of how the logic works, I think, than the way you apply it doesn't really apply directly, like in that it isn't usually practically applied in that sense. But when you look at the whole logic system, I guess, put together, this is the best explanation I can just think of off the top of my head, is that it does ultimately kind of make sense in the big picture of when working with the mechanics of the logic, I think, is one way to explain it. But I haven't thought about it enough to know if that's the best way to explain it or to the best way to understand it. But essentially, with the logic system that we're working with, that is kind of the case, is that false implies any statement. So you can prove, it's not like all statements out there have the value true or false. It's basically like, if you can come up with a statement and prove it, then you know that the statement can exist. But just because you make something that looks like a statement doesn't mean it's actually like an actual statement that can be proven true and false. And Gödel showed that, if you don't believe me, then I will ask you, does the set of all sets which do not contain themselves contain itself? And regardless of whether you say yes or no, I could basically prove you wrong. And thus, it kind of proves that that set just doesn't exist. It doesn't make sense to even define the set. It's trying to, like, it's almost like saying 5 divided by 0. Like, is that number big or small? And it's just not like a defined number. So that set is like not a defined set. Okay, so enough with the philosophical talking, and back to the thing. So they gave us a new thing here, which actually does exactly what I was talking about. False implies anything. So you give it a false, and you can prove anything with it. And it sounds, and we'll look at how intuitive that is in some other examples. So for now, we'll just say, oh, we can just prove everything with false. Woohoo! So let's just have fun being dumb and just proving everything with false. Yay, A is true and B is true. Oh, wait. Oh, we need 2 of them because it's 2 different instances. Right. So we need 2 separate. There we go. Yay! A and B are always true because every proposition is true because we're assuming false. Here's a philosophical thing. Obviously, false is not actually a true thing. Like, it's never, like, if you apply this to real life, and a proposition is like basically representing a statement, that's like a true, like that it's either a true or false statement, then obviously it doesn't make sense to assume that something is false is true. So obviously this is kind of like a nonsensical thing in the first place. But think about, now I want to just remind you, look at this block here. Remember, we can make assumptions. And then look at this block here. Remember, this one's got assumptions too. Now, in the context of an assumption, let's say you have something that's false. Well, this is making up its own ideals. So it's already claiming to not be a true thing. So that means that you could use a false proving something to be true inside of an overall proof that actually does apply to a real life situation, potentially, is basically what I'm saying there. So there. Ha. Anyway, let's go to the okay, phew. I was like, why isn't it loading? Okay, so I'm going to use A to prove that either false or A is true, which is easy because A is the second one. So yes, either false or A is true if we know that A is true. It sounds very sensible to me. False or A implies that A is true. So we know that either false is true or A is true. Remember, so A might not necessarily be our assumption, but if it's not, then we know false is true, and we know that false implies everything, including A. So no matter what, A is going to be true if we know that at least one of these two is true. So let's break apart the OR and prove it. So there we go. We have the break aparting thing, and we can assume either false or A. So A just obviously proves itself, and false just needs one of these blocks to prove A. That's easy. And you guys still, like, if you're still caught up on, like, what is going on with false and proving something, wait until we get to law of excluded middle, and then you'll see. Because this is how you prove things by contradiction. This is how if you can assume that a proposition does, in fact, have a yes or no answer, if you can assume that, I'm saying that you can't necessarily always assume that something is a valid proposition, that you can assume that. But if you can, then this is useful, because then you can use negation, basically. It's basically like, imagine like having a set. I don't know if you ever worked with set theory, but you have like a set that includes everything that exists. And then inside of that, you have like a smaller set with A and a smaller set with B or whatever. And then the complement of A is everything in the bigger set that's not included in A. Right? So when you have when you prove something false, you can basically assume that you can basically assume, in some cases, depending on your logic system, you can assume that its complement is true. So you can prove that, like, for example, if the sky was black, then following that, there's no chickens in the world, then prove that there are chickens in the world, then it follows that the sky wasn't black. So if you can prove a contradiction, anyway, I'm not going to get into that yet. Okay, so we know that both false and A is true. That obviously implies that false is true, because an and means just that both of them are true. So let's split that apart, and we just need the first one. Easy, easy, easy. We just need to prove that false implies A. So we construct a function that assumes false and implies A. So yes, we can assume that false implies A out of nothing. A implies B. implies that if B implies false, then... Oh, and by the way, when you see a B implies false, that's the same as saying that B is false. Because check all the cases and you'll see that it's what I'm saying is true. If B is true, it's implying false, which false can't be true. And if B is false, then it doesn't matter. So it's basically restricting B from being able to be true, in a way, is actually what it's doing. Which that might sound like it means that B is false, but if you study logic systems, is basically, I guess, also you're assuming that B actually can exist in the first place. I'm not going to get into that. Okay, anyway, let's just do this. A implies B. And then we want to construct... Let's connect this. Right? So what do we get to assume? Okay, so we can assume that B is false. I'm trying to think here. So, wait. And we have A implies B. We can't just assume false. Let's see, hold on. B is false. And we need to prove that A is false from that. If A implies B. Oh! And if you guys don't know, this is like one of those basic laws too. I don't know if it's De Morgan's or another one. Like, this is basically saying if A implies B, then the negation of A implies the negation of B of A. The negation of B implies the negation of A. Let's see here. How do we do that? How do we prove... How do we prove that? Because we can't... I wonder... Let me just look at what this assumption gives us. Does it give us A? Okay. So we're given A. Okay, now we have a contradiction. Yes, we have a contradiction, which is what we wanted. Bam. See? Okay, so here's where you use false. Here's where you use false in a more practical sense, because this is an actual practical kind of statement. Same with this. And nowhere does this in the meta context imply anything is false. So you can apply this directly to, like, logical propositions in real life, like, oh, the sky is blue or whatever. So you can apply this, and yet within there you have a contradiction. So it's basically saying, like, you know, if I woke up this morning A, then I definitely got food. Which means if I didn't get food, that means I did not wake up this morning. You know, sounds like it makes sense. So, taking the assumption that, assuming that I didn't get food, but then, let's see, how would you even say that? I got up this morning. Okay, assuming that I didn't get food, and knowing that if I got up, then I would have gotten food, then assuming that I got up, that means I would have gotten food. But since I'm assuming that I didn't get food, and then that means there's a contradiction, which means it can't be true that I got up, given that I didn't get food. Therefore, you have the result that me not getting food means that I didn't get up. Is if you wanted to convert it into English. Does that sound like fun? Yeah, that's why I would rather do this visual stuff, because it's actually simpler than trying to convert it to English, even though some people like to, think of things in terms of English to kind of understand. That's just one way you can apply it, though. So you got to understand, logic can be applied any way you want. You can apply it any way you want. You don't have to apply it for A representing a statement that's like a true thing in real life that exists around you. You don't have to like directly apply it in that way. You can apply the mechanics of what's going on here and to like type theory and stuff, and like variables in a program and stuff like that. And it doesn't have to represent like something like that. And the nice part about that means that there's more possibilities for what you can use it for, such as intuitionistic logic, which restricts you more, but then it gives you an advantage. So it doesn't let you use like double negations. But if you think about it, like, you want to use that intuitionistic logic when you're doing proofs anyway, because Gödel already showed that you can have things that essentially look like propositions that can't actually be proven, or that, and somebody showed that you can't have a true, Tarski showed that you can't have a true or false statement to certain things that basically look like propositions, or whatever. Or maybe they're valid propositions. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the set of all sets which don't contains itself is the thing that Tarski showed, but that doesn't sound like it's an actual valid proposition. I'm explaining some deep philosophical stuff here, but it's really annoying when you're a quote-unquote religious person, and I put quotes there because I don't like what that term means, but essentially someone who does believe in like a higher power and things like that, and then you get in an argument with someone who doesn't understand logic very well, and then it basically thinks that you're like questions your belief, like your understanding or your beliefs or something, because they're assuming their own system of logic that actually isn't correct. And when you try to correct it, then they make these assumptions about you, and yeah. Anyway, we won't get into all that right now, but yeah. Let's do an and here and split it apart. Is that an and? So we need to independently prove that A is false and B is false. This says that A or B is false, which means that no matter which one we have, nope. If we're going to use this, then that means we're probably going to use this, which means we're probably going to use this, which means we're probably going to need 2 of these, because these require one of these, but each of these require to be a different one of these. I don't know if you understood what I don't know if you understood what I just said there, but basically we need 2 of these things to provide assumptions for these things, because how else would we get the A or B to be an assumption? But that's just A. Crap. Oh, that's fine though, because that's the first one of this, which I can use as the assumption. Alright, so there we go. B, second one, put it here, put it there. Nope, that something's not right. No, that's fine. Assuming A, we get false. Assuming B, we get false. Yep, there we go. So we've proven that in the case where either A is true or B is true, both of them prove that false is true, which basically is just saying that they're a contradiction. If either one is true, so it's a contradiction, which means, and then, yeah. So it's basically state. So if you wanted to read this in like its most simple form, it's saying that it's false that the statement A or B is not true, means that both A is false and B is false. Let's move on. Let's move on. A is false and B is false. And from that, we're going to prove... Oh, wait a minute. Do helper blocks... I wonder if helper blocks let you take a proof that you've already done and then, like, put it inside of, like, one block so that you can reuse it easily. I think that's what it was. Or is that custom block? I don't remember. Anyway, so from this we have an AND, which we might as well split into 2 statements since we don't have to mess with any separate contexts. So I think it's only a strictly good idea to split it apart because of that fact. A implies false, B implies false. We need to construct a implies false. So we'll need one of these, which means we need to prove false. We need to prove a contradiction, assuming what? A or B, which is fine because we have both of these. So then we could just split that into 2 cases. And so then assuming A and assuming B, we can prove contradiction for each of them if we just combine them with the functions that we already have here. And we are pretty much done as soon as I finish connecting all this. So this is made years ago. I was playing this and it made me think about like something that I had already thought about before even playing this game, which was you can enumerate the number of possibilities here isn't necessarily like exponential in some sense. Like it is, but it's a lot smaller than brute forcing through all possible like lexicographical proofs that have to be verified. So if I went through and I just checked like A, B, C, you know, AA, AB, AC, AAA, AAAB, AAC, AAD, or whatever, like that's like super exponent. That's like 2 to the whatever, 2 to the 50th power. 2 to the 50th power. Something's not right about what I just said. 50th power. No, that's 50 to the power of... That's 50 to the power of however long your proof is. So if your proof needs 1,000 characters, that's 50 to the 1,000th power. That is so astronomically high of a number. It is so insane. It does not make sense at all, because for each one of those, then you'd have to run an algorithm that then tries to verify if it's in proof, and then unambiguously do that, and like check it against all the other possibilities. That doesn't make any sense. It's too big of a number. You would break all cryptocurrencies, and but if you restrict it a lot more, then it's different. It might still be exponential, but it's a different... You can abstract it enough. You can abstract it from there, because you limit it to where every single parse tree is a valid thing. Anyway, we're gonna... No, I don't know. I need to stop talking too much. Ah! Okay. This is an or. This is an implies. See, notice how the way I start this is I just start connecting things, because I don't know how I'm going to do this proof, but I'm going to start just connecting things and then figure out what connects to what. I did not mean to connect those, though. That probably isn't going to go there. But I want to see what it does. See, but a computer could do what I'm doing right here. A computer could do it. So let's just assume that that implies false. So what does that mean? That means that we just have to show that assuming A is false and B is false, we can get an we can prove false, which we can because we have this. We have A and B proven in this assumption, right? They're ANDed, so that means we have both of them free to use, which means we can just use these, and there we go. We've used the functional version of false statements. I'm not trying to lie to you guys. I'm just trying to provide you with false statements. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's see. A is false, is false, is false implies that A is false. See, this is the one that I was talking about in propositional calculus. Or wait a minute. Does that go against intuitionistic logic? It implies false, because it's using implies. It's not using. Is that really the same thing as negation? Because you don't need law of the excluded. I don't have law of the excluded middle over here, do I? I don't. Do I? Like, I'm trying to think. Because given A, well, okay. Well, maybe I should. Does this make sense? I don't know if this makes sense. Right now I'm just doing pattern matching. I'm just trying to see if I can get something that looks like it has the same structure as what I'm trying to get. False. That doesn't make sense. Well, what if I connect, instead of connecting that there, I connect that there. And then I connect this there. Well, it's saying that I can't do that. Well, what if I connect this here? Wait, what? I'm so confused. I am so confused. I don't know how to do this. No, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I can tell just by looking at this. Like, in classical logic, like, this is true. Like, it's just, you know, the double negation of a negated proposition is just the negated proposition. Like, it's just like the negations are essentially canceling each other out, is all it's doing. Maybe this. Let me think about this for a second. If okay, so given A, we want to prove false, but we can't use this yet. But we can construct something that uses this. But how? Well, we need to construct a function that takes an A function that gives false, right? Right? So if we can assume A, and we get false, what am I doing wrong here? How does this inductively work? So if we have an A, what statement would we need to get a false? We would need from the A, we would need to get false. We would need to assume that A implies false. But then we would just be constructing what we already are trying to get. So we shouldn't use the A to try to get the false by using an A implies false, because we're already because if we could construct that, then there would be no need for this in the first place. Right? So we need to somehow, from A, we need to get false, but in a different way than applying that directly. So how would we get it? Well, we could apply this first section right here and then get false. From it. Right? So that's a function. Okay, yeah. So that means on the top, we need this. No. Okay, so for a normal function, we'd be proving it by given the we'd be proving the second thing, the y part. Okay, so the y part here is the false. The x part is everything else. So we need the x arrow y part at the top, which is that. And then that part there. Okay, I see. So this assumption, right? And then that's a function of, yeah. Or that's an implication, I should call. I call it a function sometimes because in functional programming you have like an input and an output. So, but in this case, we're just talking about an implies. Okay, so these two together should imply false. There we go. That's it. So basically this came in at like not the last step, but the step before the last step, I guess. A implies false, implies false, implies false. You get A is false. Okay. Anyway, so if A is false or B is true, that means that A implies B. Remember I said that this is a different definition of this, because actually it goes the other way too. You could take this, I think, and then prove see, not A or B. Yeah, you could take this one and prove the first one actually, too, I think. Well, let's do this standard strategy, which is just kind of put this thing on both ends and take a look at what we have to play with. That's what I always do. I always just kind of look at both sides, and try to break it apart. So this is an OR, so we can break apart the OR. I don't know what we'd prove from the OR, but here's the things that we would just have to assume. We'd have A is false and B, and then we could prove anything from these. Anything we want, as long as we can use just one of these or the other. And then we can prove whatever we want, assuming A is as well. So it looks like that makes sense, because it looks like we can prove false at the top, and then we can prove B at the bottom. And then if we can prove false at the top, we can prove B. You know what I'm saying? So like B, so we can basically prove B with this. Yep. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm doing this so quickly you guys probably didn't follow along. So I don't know if that does that explain itself? You know that either this first statement or the second statement is true. If the second one is true, okay, then just B is true. Which means that A implies B, like, is fulfilled. Like, as long as B is true, like, that statement is always true, because it doesn't matter what A is. All this is saying is that if A is true, then B has to be true. If B is true no matter what, then it doesn't matter. But in the other case, we don't necessarily know if B is true, but we'll know that A is false. Right? And we also are assuming A to prove this. So we know that A is false, but then we're assuming that A is true. Well, that's a contradiction. That doesn't make, basically saying that doesn't make sense, so therefore B, it follows that just B must be true. Like, we can just say, like, hey, this case can't exist, so therefore, like, anything. Think about it. Like, so if A is false, right? That goes against our assumption here of A. Right? Because we're not proving A doesn't have to be true for the statement to be true. When we assume it here, that doesn't mean A is always true. You get what I'm saying? This is saying if A is true, then blah, 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 this. Right? That's all it's saying. And what I'm basically saying is, intuitively, I'm trying to explain this to, like, the the people who aren't just doing the mechanical logic, but trying to explain it in a way that, English or something. I'm basically saying, well, you want me to make sure that if A is true, something holds up, right? But I'm basically taking a step back, and I'm basically just saying, well, you know what? I can just prove to you that A isn't even true in the first place. Which means that I don't have to conclude anything with your requirements, because all your requirement is saying is that if A is true, then you need to prove to me that B will be true. That's all this is saying here. And what I'm saying is just like, well, okay, I can show you that A never will be true in the first place, which means that whatever requirement you wanted is fulfilled. You guys get what I'm saying? And that's why false implies everything. That's why. You get what I'm saying? It's like a set theory mechanic. That's all it is. It's like, that's how proof of contradiction works. So, anyway, let's finish this up. So, A is false, and B implies A, right? Now, B is false from that. Okay? So, let's construct let's construct one of these. And this is going to be like pretty much our whole proof, so we can just treat this like it's our own assumption if we want. Let's combine it and be like, well, we know that we can take this and combine them together and prove A. Well, we know that if we have A and A implies false, then we have false. So this is saying this is a contradiction. So it's saying that our assumption is a contradiction. So basically what I'm saying is, this is trying to prove that B is false. And to prove that B is false, what am I doing? I'm assuming that B is true. Right? This is proof by contradiction. So I'm assuming that I have to prove that if B is true, then what? False. Right? In all cases, we reach false. In all cases, it's a contradiction. So I'm basically proving, like, no, B can't be true. It has to be false, because otherwise it got false. A implies false, which means A is false. And then B implies A, and we have B, which means A must be true and A must be false. Right? Both of those. But that's given our assumption of B, so it's not like a nonsensical thing. It's just saying that that's given ours, that makes a statement about this assumption, because this assumption is within the context of these. These is like, if you're applying this to real life, these would be the actual statements, and this would be like, well, hypothetically, blah. Prove that it doesn't make sense. B is false. Let's do this one. Let's do this one. Okay, so it's saying that either A is false or B is false, or C is false. Okay. Now this is basically saying that you can't say that all three are true, because we know that at least one of them is false. This makes perfectly logical sense to me already, because I know that one of the three has to be false. So this statement that they're all true can't be true. So of course that has to be false. Get what I'm saying? So let's break it apart. You got an or. Okay. And then you can try to prove that. I'm assuming you just prove that, I guess. Okay. What do we have to assume here? Oh, and we have another or, I guess. We can break that one apart too for fun. Right? What do we have to assume here? A is false. We have B is false. And then out of that, we just have to construct this one way or another. Right? Does that make sense? Alright, let me think about this for a second. So we have, what are we trying to prove? False, given C? Given A and B and C. So this one is kind of straightforward, but at the same time it's also tedious. It's also like, it's like tedious. It's like really tedious. So from this we have C, and C is false, right? And we're not even going to use this, but like if you look at it, like we're basically just breaking apart all three cases. And then in this case we're like breaking apart all three cases like twice. Or what am I saying? All three cases, but in each case you have to like break apart the three letters out of their and statements. Yeah. So we need to get, where do we get a B from this? So then we need to get another one of these, another one of these, and then from this assumption we can get an A, and from this assumption we can get a B. But this one's even worse because we have to break it apart twice. Oh my goodness, this is crazy. Okay, so we have an A. We have an A is false. Okay, I'm going to stretch this one all the way back over here. And then we have this one. So we have a, we want to break apart this. We have a A and a B, and then we have a B, and then we have a B is false. Right? I don't know if you guys are able to follow along. I'm making it so messy. So I feel bad if I... There we go. Okay. Oh my goodness. I hope I didn't scare anyone there. Does that make sense to you guys? I don't know if reordering this is even going to help, because it's probably getting confusing for some people. Let me make this longer. So basically, most of these statements are just breaking apart the ands and saying, like, okay, if I know that A and B and C is true, then that basically just implies that B is true. Or I know that if A and B and C is true, then that basically just implies that A is true. Or if I know that A and B and C is true, well, that basically just means that, in this case, that I can just say that C is true. So it's kind of like, here, let me just move this out of the way so it can get smaller. Let me move these, like, out of the way. So, right? So there's those three cases. And then out of those three cases, I'm basically, like, assuming those to prove the contradiction with the original statement here, which is that all three of them are false. Or one of the three could be false. And so if I assume that this statement, the first part of this statement, to be true, then in all three of these cases, I can prove it false, false, false in all three cases. And then since in every single case it's false, then that follows that, okay, that disproves this first statement. So therefore that implies false, which is just saying that this first statement, this in front of the arrow sign here, it has to be false. So that's that one. Let's do the last one. What is it saying? It's saying either A is true or A is false in a more convoluted way. It's basically saying either A is true or it's not true. Which is like true, but it's kind of like this convoluted, weird way of just saying that A is either true or false. Which is kind of interesting, because if you can prove this, that's similar to law of the excluded middle, so I'm not sure if that... Can you just generate law of the excluded middle from nothing? Like, I don't... With just the blocks that they give us? Maybe. I'm not... Hold on a second. I need to get a drink of water really quick. It's so hot and thirsty. Jeez. Phew. Okay. Oops. You guys get that, right? You understand that? Okay, anyway. Anyway, let me think about this. We want to prove that this is a contradiction. So we have an assumption to work with. A or A implies false. Must be false, which makes complete sense. It's basically saying that A cannot be both true and false, which that is like true even if like you can't prove that exists, I think. Right? Or can you just assume that? I don't. A or I think. Wait a minute. Let me think about this for a second. I don't know if there's the right way to go about this. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's the right way to go about that though. Because can I just... Yeah. I should be able to just prove that it's an or, right? But doesn't an or have to take something in? No, I'm generating an or. Right? Which means that for this... Oh my goodness, don't tell me. Don't tell me I have to use log of the excluded middle. Or am I proving it? Am I proving log of the excluded middle? That's basically what this is, right? Well, hold on. Let me think about this for a second. What does this have to... What? So this one, you can assume X and you can assume Y. As long as you can assume that A or X or Y is true. There's something about the fact that this is a false that I have to break that apart. And then I can basically... hold on. I'm trying to think, like, how would I... Like... Like... You know what I mean? Like, I can't use this assumption for this because this is within the context of proving this, which means that this is the outer statement. But like but if I prove false here, no. There's this thing that basically lets you log excluded middle. I think in this game they give you a block that basically says like false or is it false? A or A implies false or something. I don't know what it is. But it basically generates like an assumption for you. out of like nothing. But they didn't give me the block yet, and I'm like trying to think like, how do you prove this? Like I have to basically prove A or A implies false somehow. But in order to do that, I need to like I think I can use this, because if I can use false, because if I can prove that if I can prove A or false is true, then I can prove that A or A implies false is true, because the case that false is true, anything is true. Right? So, no, I can't prove that A is or false is true. That doesn't make any sense. That's like just proving A. That doesn't make any sense. Oh! Right, but if I can prove that either A, in either case, so I can assume A, and I can assume A is false. No, how do I do that? I don't know how to do this. This is weird. This is like really weird. How do you just like generate like a proof? Like the only thing that generates like an assumption is like the implies. Like this is like the only thing that like doesn't necessarily depend on something. Oh! But wait a minute. Maybe I can generate that A implies A is false out of this. Right? Because yeah. Because if I have A, then I can prove that basically A is false. Right? Because I can use two of them, I guess. Or something like that. Right? I don't know. I honestly don't know. But like... Okay, let me just think about this for a second. So if I have A... Wait a minute. I'm trying to think here. That's what I have here, though. A or A implies false implies false. I wonder if I can use this assumption. I'm watching, or I'm listening to Sharon DuBois again. Still, I should say still, not again, because basically I just keep it running. The YouTuber ASMR Glow, which is mic scratching, or it's called was it brain massage. Tries to keep me calm, or try to keep myself calm when doing this type of stuff. But I'm still, even though I'm listening to that, I'm still gonna stress out. I am still stressing out, cause like how A implies false. So do I need to use this assumption twice? Here, let me just, for fun, let me break apart this or. Right? Is it an or? Or is it a... A implies false. From this. So if I show a contradiction, I think my brain is starting to hurt. Okay. This is going to be really, like, possibly not work and possibly very counterintuitive, but, like, what if, like, inside of the thing that's I'm trying to prove this part of this with, I put, like, the same thing. Right? But no, that's counterintuitive, because then I'd have to prove that. So, like, yeah. Of course it doesn't make sense. I mean, I could use this if there's another way to break it apart, but there's not. It's an implies, isn't it? Let me think here. Okay, let me just think for a second. Obviously, this applied to this as its argument. This argument into this gives you false. That's the whole point of this thing. So out of nothing, I already have this statement trying to claim that it's false. Now I need to show that it's true for there to be contradiction. Because all this is saying is that it's false. And if that's, like, universally impossible, then I need to, like, show that somehow. Ooh, I'm frustrated. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, I don't have law of the excluded middle here. And that's what I would use. That's exactly what I'd use here. But there's a way around it, apparently, for this proof. Like, you can prove it without using law of the excluded middle. Which is, if you think about it, that's actually good logic then, because then you can skip the intuitionistic, or it can be intuitionistic, which means that it's constructive. You don't have to depend on the complement of sets, which applies to type theory. Guys, I don't know what I'm doing. This is starting to remind me of 7 Billion Humans when I was on like one of those final games that took 3 hours. We're back there again. We are back there again. How do you... Can you do this without law of excluded middle? Is that even possible? Can you? Like... No. I mean... That doesn't make sense. Because you have to use it if you're taking the complement of the complement of the complement, because you're complementing against the whole set. If you assume that you can do that, then I think that means that you have to use the law of excluded middle. That means that you have to assume that you can assume that a proposition is either true or false. Because if you can't, then that means you can't prove this. A or A is false is false is false. Like, that's assuming that A is a valid proposition, isn't it? Because you could say if the set of all sets does not contain itself is A, then it's false that it is false that it's false. Like, that assumes that the proposition is okay. Guys, I'm starting to this is driving me nuts. I think like the only way physically, like if you just look at the stupid blocks here, like the only way to like produce something is to like use this and then maybe like assume like a contradiction or something. Like the only way to produce something is like using the functions. You can't just produce an or, I guess. Can you? She's anyway. It's mind-blowing. This is weird. Like, this thing produces a function, and like you have to apply the function to something in order to, right? Wait, that doesn't make any sense though. What? Okay. So, I'm so confused. So, this is saying that A or A implies false is false. This is saying that What? Where do I get the assumption that A or A implies I? I don't know what I'm doing, guys. This is weird. Like, I don't know. I don't even know how I'd... This is really weird. So can I, like, prove that something is false? Like... 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 What am I doing? You can't... What am I doing? Okay, this is just weird. I don't even know what I'm doing. I have no idea. I have no idea how to do this at all. I have no idea how to do this. Should I Google it? Should I Google... Like... Current task. Given nothing. How do you input proposition? Helper block. Like, nope, that just saves the SVG. Okay, this is weird. Can you do it without the helper block? Like, if I assume false, then I can prove that, like, anything false implies anything, and then I can use that to say, like, no. False implies A or A is false. But here I'm proving that I can't do that because that's inside of it. That's inside of that statement. False implies that A or A is false. That doesn't sound like it's helpful at all. Because, like, A or A is false should be like a true thing. But if it is, then I should be able to just assume it. Right? Like, hold on, I'm so confused. So maybe I can just take a maybe I can like break this apart and be like, I don't know. And I mean, am I proving law of the excluded middle? Or what? I mean, if you assume false, you just get everything. So, no, I don't want this to be another one of those episodes where I'm just stuck all the time. What I want this to break apart is the assumption that it's either A. Okay, I'm going to construct this in such a way that I'm going to pretend that the top is going to be A, and the bottom is going to be A implies false. So the top one's A. The bottom one is A implies false. And they contradict, though. Trying to think here. Something. I'm just. My. Should I look this one up? Which one are we on? Session 4, last one. Okay, let's try this. Nope. That's not it. Wow, he did a white paper on it. That's cool. Yeah, this was someone's, I don't know if it was like his PhD thesis, but it was like some kind of, thesis or paper or some sort, which I was interested in for a while, but I asked him about one of the proofs I think I was stuck on, but I never actually saw this white paper that I know of. He does mention Coke in here too. Using Isabel or Coke. Helper block. Okay. Oh, perfect though. You know what? It's quite helpful to break down a proof into smaller steps. Oh, here we go. See? A or A implies false is a custom block. User soon notices some patterns appear repeatedly. One pattern would be a proof by contradiction. P implies false, false, and then P. This is what I don't get. See, this is like law of excluded middle. But I think I can. The point it. Okay, so he's saying that you can code your own custom blocks using a tech. I don't know if that means that you need it. See, what is TND? I forgot what TND stands for, but it basically means law of excluded middle. It's saying that a proposition is either true or false. Shift clicking. Custom block. So assuming that P is false, prove false, and then you can assume P. No, something's weird with that. Like, this is the thing that I'm looking for. Like, this right here. You get what I'm saying? If I have this, if I have the statement A or A implies false, the cut rule, you can just assume and produce. Helper blocks. See, he's already talking about quantifiers here, though. Guys, I think I'm stuck. I don't know how you would... I don't know how you get this. Oh, no, that's... I don't know if this is possible. With just the... Is it? Oh, he has theorems that prove the soundness and completeness of the of his statement or whatever. So it's a complete but not consistent? Because you can't have a logic system that's both complete and consistent. Gödel proved that you can't have both of those, so I'm not sure. But he doesn't say, he says sound. Okay, let's jump to session 5 really quick and see. Session 5 lets you use it. Session 5 lets you use it. Hey guys, there's a way to do it without it. There is a way to do it without it. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to do it without it, but there's supposedly a way to do it. And I don't... Now I'm curious. Oh man, this has got me curious. How? 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 How would you do that? Oh! Hold on a second, guys. I might have not been paying attention to something correctly. Okay, let's just look at something really quick. Okay. Right? We have this or as an assumption. See, look at this. So this is A or this second clump, but this isn't a function here. See, there's parentheses around it. Oh wait, no, it is a function, isn't it? But then the... Give me a second here. Give me a second here. Just give me a second here. Okay. We have an or in here. We can break this apart. This is an or. How do we, like, how do we get that as like an assumption though? I was wrong. I was thinking that this thing was grouped and then somehow that was an or. Man, my brain is not doing anything useful here. Somehow we don't need it though. Because somehow this is by itself is good enough. A or A not. That combined with that would give me false. If I could just assume this, we'd prove it. If I could just assume it, we'd prove it. It's just so evasive. TND. I forgot what TND stands for. He didn't say exactly what it stands for. It's like you gotta like hold on. This parentheses yeah. There's gotta be a way to... Maybe there is a way to prove TND without using TND. Like, is there? Did he give an example? Custom blocks. One such pattern would be a proof by contradiction, which consists of the 3 blocks highlighted. Oh, I see. So he's using a proof by contradiction, saying like, oh, since... Oh, it stands for tertium non datur. Disjunction elimination in ex falso quodlibet, which basically says that it must be one or the other, and then you can prove false for the other one, and that therefore it proves that it's true. Because you prove that's impossible for it to be false. The only problem is, like, A implies false, implies false. Yeah, so they shorten that into a block. But still, how do you get T and D? You can't do that. Implication done wrong. Guys, this is crazy. This has got me stumped. I'm stumped. I'm amazed at that fact. I'm amazed that there's a way to do this without TND, but what I don't get is that, like, isn't this the only block that can break this statement apart? Or that can I should say, construct this statement right here. Right? Like, this is an implies. So isn't this the only thing that can, like, create it? Let me just try something. Maybe there's a way... Maybe there's, like, an abstract way to prove this, but, like, it breaks it apart at a different level. Maybe. I have no idea. I literally have no idea. Like, you'd have to construct... like, one of these statements out of nowhere, and then, like, so as long as I can prove that some kind of X implies X, then I can somehow construct a I guess if something implies itself, then that proves that either something implies itself or Y right? I'm not sure. That doesn't work. That works. So either the second statement is true or something implies itself. And if something implies itself, what would I need to prove? The original stupid statement. Oh, there's Sharon again. Guys, I don't even know. I don't know how to do this. This is like blowing my mind. Like, what do I get to assume here? Something implies itself. Like A implies A. Like, so I could say that either A is true How did this is insane. Oh my goodness. No. Oh, that's nice. I can just use my mouse wheel. So this is really cool. I like this stuff that the fact that he made all these the fact that he made all these things. Guys, yeah, he likes Haskell. But guys, I don't. Proof of time travel. No, incredible proof machine. I never remember getting stuck on this. Currying. See, but that you don't have an assumption here. So like this is what I don't get. This is what I don't understand. Like he doesn't give you the TND rule. What is a block count? What is a block count? So is green the number of blocks and blue is the number? One, two, three, four, five. I think the numbers. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Six. So this is saying something about like 7. 7 blocks are required to prove this. I wonder if I can just say T and D. This is really weird. The fact that you supposedly can prove this without T and D is really interesting. But I guess you're not necessarily negating it. You're just basically saying it's false, that it's false, that it's false. Which doesn't imply that you actually have to negate it. Doesn't necessarily prove that it's true. Or that it's that it exists. Because when you say it's false, that it's false, that it's false, then you're just saying that it's possible that the, proposition it could be just false because the proposition doesn't exist. So of course that would be false, that it's false, and if what I'm thinking is true just in that sense, which has nothing to do from like the mechanics of this game, but has everything to do with just some logic that I've studied in the past, then that means if somehow that does apply, that means that somehow I could use like a double, like I could basically there would be a case where it's possible where there's a contradiction. Case. Guys, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I am very sad that I don't know what to do. I don't know what... This is sad that I don't know what to do. Is this saying that the right is grouped? Or not? I don't think it is. See? But if I break that apart, then it is. False. Which means I could just... This seems to be the only mechanical, like, way for these things to connect with each other. It seems to be like the only possible thing that could connect to that. It's like the only... Oh, no, that's not necessarily. What's this? Yeah, this is saying an or, but you don't need this to produce an or. You could just use anything that produces an or, which is this, or this, or this, or this, or this. So you could technically just like use that. And then you could basically use this to like prove a contradiction with itself. Which I tried to do already. Like 10 times, didn't I? Ah! Yeah. But it's a contradiction! It's just like inductive. It's just like I can just like recursively just keep making this go out forever. Like, oh, I wanted to prove this, I'll prove itself. To prove this, I'll prove itself. Oh man, this is impossible. This is like freaking impossible. I don't know how to do this. How? How do you do that? How do you get false from this? How do I assume A or A? I don't need to assume A or A is false. I just need to prove that that doesn't make sense. All I need to do... What if I keep the second part group? No, I can't do that because that's separated. It's A or A. I can't do... These are like... There's parentheses around this left part. It's its own thing. But still, what if somehow I didn't unwrap it somehow? And I just said like this first part of the statement, like even though I can't talk about it directly, I can just call it X or whatever. And I can just say that, well, if X is true, if this first statement is assumed, is that the only way to do that? Maybe there's like a weird... Maybe there's like a... You can't just prove false. Okay, that doesn't make sense. You can't just prove... That doesn't make sense. this does. I think I tried to do this like 5 times already. But like, right? That would be a weird thing to assume. But you could like assume that, I guess. But then you'd have to prove the same thing all over again. The same freaking thing all over again, and you don't know what you don't have anything. Ah! This is somebody messing with me? You can select blocks in a proof by clicking them while holding down Shift. Then the option to create custom blocks, right? Takes a Y and returns a X or Y. New custom block. What's a helper block? That's what I'm... Guys, I don't know. I don't know how to use a helper block. I don't know how to do it, guys. I don't know how to do it. A or triple negation. Is this even possible? Okay. Intuitionistic logic is basically classical logic, except law excluded, middle removed. So if we consider, so we can't get double negation. You can't get A from double negation of A. Triple negation of A is equivalent to the negation of A. It is standard to identify negation of A with A implies false in intuitionistic logic. The lambda term corresponds to the proof of A implies B implies B implies B implies A implies B under the Corey-Howard correspondence. Instantiating B to false gives you the negation of the negation of the negation of A implies the negation of A. So that's weird. You can like cancel out negations. assume this, we are to show the negation of A, that is, A implies false. Assume A, we are to show false. Since A, we have... What? Right. X falso equivalent. So I guess you can do it the opposite direction. So you can't get rid of the double negations, but you can introduce them. Because if you're given A, you can say the negation of A is true, but you can't start with the negation of A and then assume this. Right? This is teaching me. You guys are watching me learn something that I talk about and I like, and at the same time I don't fully grasp it good enough to have it mastered. So like, it's kind of cool. I still don't get how it's done mechanically in this situation. Because you could say, you could talk about A, and then you could do an OR, and be like, okay, well, I'm going to guess that A exists. And then one side of the OR, you could say, like, you could just prove it. And then in the other side, you would just... Right? Something like that. This is so crazy. If you can prove it without it, then that shows the power of... I think that shows like how powerful intuitionistic logic is, or shows how it works, like the mechanics of it. I mean, does that make sense though? Because you're not assuming that eggs exist as a proposition. So you're not saying, oh, either it's true or it's false. You're saying that either it's true or it's not true that it's not true that it's not true. Which means that it could either be false or it doesn't exist. Which sounds like that includes everything that's possible. So there should be a way to do this without that. There should actually be a way to do this then without that assumption. But wait, but that's not how this works. A or the double negation is false. That's what it's saying. It's saying either A is true or it's not true that it's not true. is saying that... What? Saying what? Either A is true or it's not true that it's not true. Must be false. Because if A was true, let's say A doesn't exist. No, if A is true, let's consider all three situations. If A is true, then either A is true or, which is true. If A is false, then either A is true or it's false that it's false. Both of those are false. But there's still the chance that it exists. But if it exists, it's false that A or it's false that makes sense. It's saying that it's impossible for A to both be true and the negation of A is true. Because if A actually exists, then its negation has to equal whatever it is. I'm so frustrated with this. I don't know if this makes sense. I am stuck, guys. I am stuck. A or A is false. I was reading this wrong earlier. I was thinking it was A or the negation of the negation of the negation of A. But that's not what it's saying. It has a parentheses here and here. So it's actually saying that it's not true that either A or the negation of A is true. That doesn't make any sense, though. Because, like, look inside the parentheses. You have A or A arrow. No, I was reading this right earlier. A or its negation. Oh, I see. This is grouped together right here. A or its negation. So either A doesn't exist, or it's true, or it's false. Okay, if it does exist, then that must be true. So that saying that that's false, that either it's true or false, they're saying is false. They're saying that you can't say that it can't be true or false, which doesn't make sense unless you assume that it exists, I think. Right? Or are they saying that assume the negation of the negation of the negation of A, which we're not. Yeah, we're not assuming that, though. This is different. told that issue that logic and that you can't infer a negation of the negation of A. What? Guys, I am frustrated. Oh, this is totally something different we should talk about sometime. Anyway, I don't know what to do, guys. I don't even know how this is possible. This doesn't even make sense. Like, how does this make sense? Can you even, is this even possible to do without? Isn't that the only way? Guys. I am like devastatingly stumped. I am devastatingly stumped. I am like devastatingly stumped. Okay, so how did we get prove falses earlier? Or were we not able to unless we had a function that returned a false? I think that's what it was. We had to have some kind of already assumed function that returned a false. Or something like that. Yeah. So we had to have like, we had to use an or. But like, then you have to have an or to do that. Which is like, how? Would we get the or out of this? Doesn't make sense. So like, there's nothing to do with this thing except break it apart as a function. And then there's nothing to do after that because where would we get the assumption? How do you get the assumption that or? You know? Is that even possible? You have to assume the or somewhere. Seven blocks. This is it. I don't know how else you would do it. Because I'm not assuming this. I'm needing to imply it. Assume A somehow. Somehow. And then you have a function it takes A implies B, and then you can get false. No. Like, what if I took this? Keep accidentally clicking on her. Oh, guys, I don't know what to do. It could be like a long video again. 3-hour video again. Stupid. Just absolutely stupid. Absolutely stupid. Merry post-Christmas, I guess, because I think I'm posting this one on 26th if I follow through with the schedule. But honestly, I might have to do some editing or something. I might have to say 3 hours later. Oh my goodness. You gotta be kidding me. I don't want to have to edit this. It's gonna be like hours and hours long. There's gotta be a way to get the this one maybe? Like, what am I trying to prove here? A or A is false, right? So if I can just prove like A is false from this, A or A is true. Hold on a second. A or A is true. But this I keep thinking that the second thing is grouped, and it's not. It's not. It's saying that A or A is false. Is false. So it's saying that neither of them. But I'm trying to. But I'm applying that to this. Like. Like I'm applying that to a function to like get rid of that false. Otherwise it's like I can't use it. That's the only thing that it is. It's x expression, whatever, however big this is, implies false. So it's like the only way I can break it down. What else? I mean, what else could I do? How else is it even possible to to construct this? Like, prove false out of nothing? That's not going to happen. Is it? I mean, I'd have to do like an OR. What if I prove either false or... No, because that's T and D. A or A implies false. You can't do it, can you? Guys, if there's a way to do this, I am so, like, astonishingly curious now. Maybe this is... Maybe there's like a bug in it, because it is kind of like he could have made a mistake in setting up. He probably has been editing it some. I don't know, guys. I don't know. Oh, I got gas. That's awkward. Okay, here we go. How do I enter these funny characters? You can define your own tasks. There are only a few places where you actually have to enter formulas, mostly if you want to use the P block or define your own tasks. There you can use the abbreviations. False or A or not A, maybe. I mean, so I could say like A or not A. A or not A. Okay. I'm gonna try this. A or A false. Huh. Uh... Guys, I think I'm gonna have to actually fail for once. I don't want to. But I mean, I'm so frustrated that I can't figure out how to do this. I mean, how do you do this? So we're gonna send this link to this episode and just ask him, I guess, because I don't. I mean, they say it says you can solve it with 7, and I mean, I don't even know. There's got to be another way to solve it. I guess I either fail or I found a bug or something. So I guess that's the end of episode, maybe, what was it, 3, 4, part A? Episode 4, part A? Yeah, we'll just stop recording here and maybe I'll try to email someone or something and try to find out the answer. See you guys later.